Chatterjee is
Gayatri Chatterjee, yes.
Gayatri Ji.
Yes.
Rita ma'am, your video is not active.
Yeah, I have
Yes.
just started
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
Hi.
Welcome, ma'am.
Hi. Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, ma'am. You're
Okay.
audible, you're visible.
Okay.
Our audio is also okay, Joyji?
Yes, ma'am, your audio, everybody's audio and video is perfect. And we are just waiting for President GMEC, Professor
I think
KG Suresh.
there is an initial film also introducing organization and all that. I think that film has not yet started. The host has to start that.
Manushree, G, if you can just start that pre-event film.
The Manushree is not there at the moment.
Camera क्या था? Camera.
It seems there is some network issue at the end of the host. Our host is in Jaipur. Seems they are informing on WhatsApp. Few seconds we'll see. If they can't make the video, then we'll start the program as such. Recording is there already. That's fine. You are mute, Juhi. You are mute.
Sir, I've just received a call from Professor KG Suresh and sir, and he will be joining soon, sir.
Oh, that's fine.
Professor Chaudhary?
Yes, ma'am.
Where do you teach, sir?
I'm just now in Dhaka, associated with Daffodil International University. But
Okay.
Somnath and me were colleagues once in Whistling Woods. I was also in Symbiosis. I was also in Amity, where Somnath is just now, but I was in the Bombay Amity. And currently, my last work was Pro Vice Chancellor of Adamas University, Kolkata. And currently, I'm in Dhaka. I'm the Secretary of the Global Media Education Council. And okay, the film has started.
Yeah.
think there is a connectivity issue.
Yes, sir. Sir, can we stop it in?
Stop the video. Pause to stop the video. So our president, Professor K.G. Suresh has joined. So I'll request K.G. Suresh ji to begin the show.
Thank
Professor
you,
K.G.
Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary. Am I audible?
You're audible
Yes, sir.
but not
Yes.
visible.
So you're visible too. So you're visible
Okay,
too.
okay. Maybe I have a problem at my end. Okay,
Okay.
continue.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Very good evening to all of you. Greetings from Global Media Education Council. Global Media Education Council, as most of you are aware, is an Indian-driven international academic platform, and some of the most eminent media educators across the world and India, of course, are associated with this initiative. This is a special initiative which we have taken. It's a special initiative which we have taken to celebrate 75 years of India's independence. And we have 75 such sessions planned, 75 speakers, and over the last couple of months, we have seen some of the finest speakers from across the world joining these online sessions with huge audiences from across the globe. And today, I'm really delighted to welcome the session chair, Dr. Aisha Iqbal, Professor, Department of Humanities and Social Sciences. Chief guest, Professor Rvita Datta, member, International Film Critics Association, and the editor of the International Film Journal, Film Buff. Eminent media educator, Professor Somnath Sen, head of the Institute, Amity School of Film and Drama, Amity University, Noida. Keynote speaker, Dr. Swarnavel Ishwaran Pillai, Associate Professor, Department of English and the School of Journalism, Michigan State University, USA. And our corporate speaker today would be Ms. Gopi Desai. And our moderator is going to be Dr. Juhi Pathak, who is Assistant Professor at the Sharda University. I'm going to introduce her, but a brief note on today's topic, and that's the potential and challenges of Indian regional cinema. It's a coincidence that only today, we concluded our National Short Film Festival at our campus, and we have seen films from all over the country. And the phenomenal success of Pushpa is an indication, and after Bahubali, is an indication of how today more and more people are watching Indian language. I have a problem with both vernacular, the term vernacular, and even regional. I prefer to use Indian language cinema. And Indian language cinema, there's a huge market, huge potential. I'm told from a lot of surveys that have come up that even up north, there is a huge interest in films being made in the south. They're being dubbed. In fact, most of the Hindi film channels are showing a lot of dubbed movies. And of course, there is a great demand for language cinema right from Ladakh, one of the remotest corners, to even states like Manipur, where very few films are made annually compared to the so-called mainstream. In fact, I can tell you from my own personal experience that as a member of the National Film Awards jury, I've had the opportunity to watch a lot of movies and several of the Indian Panorama section and the National Award jury. And believe me, it was Loktak Lairambi, a Manipuri film, which prompted me to visit, the Loktak Lake in Manipur, I mean, that was the power of that movie. It was so haunting. And I'm sure that, those who are not exposed to it are really missing out big. If you look at the statistics also, language media, whether it is television, print, digital, they are growing by leaps and bounds. There is a huge interest. People are wanting to read, listen to, watch content in their respective languages. And that's why even in dialects, you see a lot of resurgence. People are rediscovering their dialects. In tribal areas of Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh, there's a revived interest in dialects like Gondi. So there is a huge interest and with the advent of OTT platforms, with the advent of a lot of platforms which are promoting, nurturing, encouraging small budget films, you see more and more young filmmakers coming, and they're doing extremely well. And now new locations are coming up all over the country. In fact, you'd be surprised to know that Madhya Pradesh, the state where my university is located, is emerging as a major center of film production. And these are small films, like Sherni, you have seen, it was an OTT film. I can give you a number of examples, but language cinema is growing. There's a huge demand for it, and they are growing even internationally. There's a huge market for Tamil films, Rajni films in Japan. So this is a growing market. And of course, in countries like Canada, and where the Indian diaspora is there, they're also, the Indian cinema is doing extremely well. I'm sure the experts here are much more qualified than me to speak on this subject. And I would like to, now straight away introduce Dr. Juhi Pathak, my colleague at GMAC, and she's going to moderate today's session. Dr. Juhi Pathak is assistant professor, as I said, at the School of Media, Film and Entertainment at the Sharda University. She is an author and has a specialization in print, television, and media ethics. She has more than 9+ years of teaching and research experience. Prior to joining Sharda, Dr. Pathak served as an assistant professor in Amity University, Noida, Amity University, Mumbai, and GD Goenka University, Gurugram. Having cleared her UGC NET GRF in mass communication in 2012, she joined the Department of Communication in Guwahati University as a junior research fellow, and also takes pride in having taught in the department as well as the Institute of Distance and Open Learning at the Guwahati University, where our friend and very active member Ankuran Datta is working. Prior to teaching and research, she worked for a brief period with Navi Mumbai television channel and has freelanced for DNA newspaper in Navi Mumbai. She has authored 4 books. The first 2 books, Introduction to Media Laws and Ethics, Television Advertising Ethics and Human Rights, have been accepted as reference books in many colleges, a great achievement for a young academic and universities across the country. The third book, Contemporary Media Discourses, Trends, Issues and Prospects, co-authored with Dr. Kriti Singh, and a 4th book on film appreciation on cinemas of Janu Barua, the social, economic and political and cultural perspectives, has received much appreciation and coverage as the regional and national media. She has supervised 1 PhD at the School of Communication. Presently, she is a professional member of the Public Relations Society of India, a member of the Commonwealth Journalists Association of India, and the International Association for Media and Communication Research. And last but not the least, she has received various awards and certificates of merit from various educational institutions for her academic excellence, including the very prestigious Anandoram Borua Award awarded by the state government of Assam, and received multiple appreciations from national and international organizations, including a recognition from the Assam State Commission for Protection of Child Rights for contribution in the area of human rights and especially child rights. I'm sure that with this kind of profile at a very young age, she's going to make it big in the world of media education. We wish her all the best. We are so happy to see youngsters who will, slowly, gradually replace oldies like me and Ujjwal. So wishing her all the best. Thank you so much. Over to Dr. Juhi Pathak.
So before Dr. Juhi Pathak starts, I would like to make one small announcement. First of all, thank you, Professor Suresh, for your presence today. We are having you after a few days, quite a number of days. Good to see, and congratulations for a lovely film festival you just now did on your campus. The social media and the mainstream media is all full of that.
Thank you.
And you could manage to get, actors like Akshay Kumar and all there is too good. Okay. So coming to today's thing, for all the guests who are coming first time on our platform, as our president has already told, this is a part of the 75 event series, and this is the 55th evening. So you can understand each day 6-7 speakers for 54 evenings have already gone. So we are coming out with few outcomes of this. 3 books, first of all. So one book is 75 Jewels of Indian Media Education. All the 75 top ranking or stalwart educationists who are being awarded. Today we'll have Professor Somnath Sen for that. So all will be covered in this book. So Somnath has to write an article plus a short profile of yours and a photograph. Similarly, all the other 74 as well. So we will publish on 15th of August. We'll launch it on 15th of August. That's point 1. When we complete the 75th year of India's independence and the 76th one starts. So 15th of August. Second point, we are also coming out with reflections in contemporary media, another book, which will be short write-ups of the other speakers, foreign speakers and Indian speakers. So I'll request you, here we are talking foreign speaker means can be Indian origin person teaching abroad like Professor Swarnavel Ishwaran who is here. So, all these speakers plus our other speakers, the chairperson and other speakers as well. So do cooperate with Dr. Juhi Pathak when she collects all these write-ups from you on the given theme. The third book is on research papers. Today, I don't find any research scholar here at this point, but in many of the events, there are 1 or sometimes even 2 research papers presented. So 50 of them are selected for the third book. These are 3 books. Second, we have started our membership drive. Someone would be contacting from GMAC. Do join the work, join the organization for future activities. Third, we are editing each evening's program into 1 hour compact program. The real program may be 1.5 hours or 2 hours, depending on each speaker speaking, but we'll be editing it into compact 1 hour within a month or so. And then we'll share the links through YouTube to each one. We can also share it through Google Drive for any use at your end as well. The link will be shared with 700 plus media schools of India and outside with whom we are connected at this moment. I just wanted to tell this. Over to the leader of today's evening and the working committee member, and her background has been very well introduced by Professor Suresh. So back over to Dr. Juhi Pathak.
Thank you so much, Professor Suresh sir and Chaudhary sir. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity today. I will straight away start with my initial address. In the capacity of being the working committee member of Global Communication Education Conclave, GCEC, under the aegis of Global Media Education Council, GMEC, I, Dr. Juhi Pathak, will be hosting a session today on potential and challenges of Indian regional cinema. It is my privilege to welcome my mentors in the industry and academia on this forum. I'm immensely grateful to Dr. Aisha Iqbal, Professor, Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Madras, who accepted my invitation to chair the session today. Professor Rita Datta, Member, International Film Critics Association, FIPRESCI, and Editor, International Film Journal Film Buff, for accepting my invitation to be the chief guest of the session. Actor, filmmaker, writer, and podcaster, Ms. Gopi Desai ma'am, who graciously agreed to be the corporate speaker, and stalwarts in the film studies, Professor Dr. Swarnavel Ishwaran Pillai, Associate Professor, Department of English and the School of Journalism, Michigan State University, USA, who too at once consented to be the keynote speaker for today, and Professor Somnath Sen, Head of the Institute, Amity School of Film and Drama, Amity University, Noida, Uttar Pradesh, who would also be awarded today for a stellar contribution to the field of media education. I'm humbled that Professor Dr. K.G. Suresh, Sir, President GMEC, has introduced me to lead the session, Heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Ujjwal Anu Chaudhary sir and Dr. Umashankar Pandey sir for keeping faith in me. Here, I would also, in the outset of the program, take the opportunity to thank one person who's outside from GMA community, Mr. Narendra Bandabiji, Director Media in Amity, Mumbai, who has contributed to the culmination of few of the esteemed panelists that we have today for this session. Now, I take this opportunity to introduce the chair of the session, Dr. Aisha Iqbal. Dr. Aisha Iqbal Vishwamohan is a professor, Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at IIT Madras, as I've already said. She works in the area of film studies, popular culture, and American literature. She has published articles in peer-reviewed Scopus Index publications such as Oxford University, Cambridge University, University of Pittsburgh, Penn State University, Routledge, Sage, and Intellect, to name a few. Her recent book comprises edited anthologies, Stardom in Contemporary Hindi Cinema, Celebrity and Fame in Globalized Times, that was published by Springer in 2020, Behind the Scenes, Contemporary Bollywood Directors, that was published by Sage in 2017, Post-Liberalization, Indian Novels in English, Global Reception and Politics of Award, was published by Anthem Publications in 2013, and Women Filmmakers in Contemporary Hindi Cinema was published by the prestigious Palgrave Macmillan, New York, which is forthcoming, which is going to come in 2023. We're looking forward to that book now. She was awarded Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute's Canadian Faculty Enrichment Program Fellowship in 2009. In 2010, she did a project on cinema of social consciousness funded by Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute, Canada. She has also organized filmmaking and screenwriting workshops in collaboration with Rajkamal Films International, SICI, and Simon Fraser University. I welcome you, ma'am, and now the stage is all yours. We're looking forward to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Juhi, and all esteemed members and panelists. And so I'm really honored to be here and a part of such, such a scholarly committee and renowned committee panel members. So Juhi had asked me, I think, to talk about for a couple of minutes about so I just about the session that we are having today, and I just thought that these are very scattered musings. I want to focus on potential and challenges of Indian regional cinema. But before that, I also want to confess that I come from the state of Madhya Pradesh, and I'm so glad that, yes, so the name of Madhya Pradesh came up, and I was so happy to hear that. And like all MP wala, to be very precise, I come from Indore.
Oh.
So yes, so I come from Indore. Both parents are medical doctors, and father was an out-and-out cine buff. He had he not been a doctor, he would have, I'm sure, would have ran away to Bombay to become an actor. He was very good looking, and yeah, so the love of cinema comes through him. And as I always tell because as you know, I'm teaching at IIT Madras, but then I always tell my students that Hindi cinema is, in my blood and DNA. I think I was 2 or 3 when I watched, my recollections of the first movie that I had ever watched, and that was Diwar, Amitabh Bachchan's Diwar. And I have revisited Diwar several times, and I love it. Every time I watch it, I like it more. And I also teach this course called Film Theory and Practice. Most of my students are from the southern regions, as you know that it is Madras. So we have students from Bangalore and Chennai, of course, various parts of Tamil Nadu and Kerala, Hyderabad, Andhra and Telangana also. So I take a lot of pleasure in introducing very young people, 20, 21-year-old students whose Hindi is not their first language, of course, but in every semester, I introduced them to Sholay and Diwar. So those are my staple movies. Yeah, so those are the movies I have grown up on, commercial Hindi films. But at the same time, as I was entering my teens, I became aware of the phenomenal work that has been done in a parallel cinema from our country, and it is an eye opener. Much of our, because see, I don't think we are as good as the West in archiving our cinema or even writing about cinema. I don't just mean preserving our cinema, but I also mean writing about cinema. There is so much that has been done, but there is so little that has been written on our cinema. So that is my major concern. So this is what I want to talk about, that when we think of potential and challenges of Indian regional cinema, regional cinema has been worked on, and I just mean scholarly and by way of scholarly documentation. So in my opinion, because I get scholars, PhD scholars from the southern part of the country, and they always, this is their major concern, that they don't get enough work, enough publications, and enough scholarly theorized material on regional cinema. Hindi cinema, of course, as we all know, for the last 20 or 30 years, it has been done, it has been worked on. And there are so many people across the world who have theorized various aspects, gender, nationalism, and impact of post-globalization, representation of cities, etc., on our, in our cinema. So Hindi films more or less are well documented. But what I feel is that there is a lot of stuff that should be, there is a lot of scope for theorizing and for scholarly material on writings on regional cinema. The other day I was talking to a very eminent writer, and we were talking about how Hollywood, every major star has they have a list of books as their biographies. If they are not doing their autobiography, then there are biographical material. So many books on each. Look at all the amount of books, number of books, sorry, on Elizabeth Taylor or Audrey Hepburn or Meryl Streep. And male actors, of course, there are so many and so many books on them. If they are not writing about themselves, then people are writing on them. But some of our greatest leading ladies, and consider, for example, Sharmila Tagore. Okay, consider, for example, Wahida Rahman. I don't know if there has been, a very, let's say, a scholarly work done on these phenomenal actresses who have contributed so much towards our cinema. To think that we have someone like Sharmila Tagore, and she hasn't written her autobiography, which is a pity, because I'm sure that there is a wealth, treasure trove of material from her life, personal experiences, working with Satyajit Ray, and the the kinds of movies she has done, the kinds of people she had worked with. Okay, so there are there are books waiting to be written on these people, but I don't think that I don't know why people don't take initiative. So coming to our regional cinema, as already mentioned by Professor Suresh, that there is so much of interest by people in regional films. Pushpa was mentioned. Of course, Pushpa is a blockbuster. And from Telugu industry, we have Bahubali and the more recent RRR. So these are the blockbusters. But let's not forget the smaller gems that are being made, especially in Kerala and Tamil Nadu. And there is in both these states, there is so much of groundbreaking work being done, where especially where gender issues are concerned, where social dynamics are concerned. And I would particularly like to make a mention of, I'm sure all of you are aware of this, but this movie is called The Great Indian Kitchen, where the basic theme, it's a Malayali movie. The idea is that how women, even in today's times, contemporary times, and educated women, they are, they are like, for example, almost like indoctrinated or conditioned to believe that their legitimate place is in the kitchen, within the four walls of their house, and particularly the kitchen. And it talks about, all these years, commercial films have taught us that women actually enjoy cooking and the process of feeding the family. But here this movie sort of, subverts the trope that there are women, who want to go beyond the kitchen, and the mess it creates. And the mise-en-scène of the movie is absolutely brilliant. It really makes you empathize and sympathize for women who, despite their lots of talent. Of course, I'm not saying that cooking is not a talent, it's a great talent, but the narrative is of a woman who doesn't really like to do these things, but she has no other choice but to spend her time within the four walls of her house and the kitchen, and then the decisions and the choices she makes. So yes, wonderful films are being made, as already pointed out, blockbusters that are traveling abroad, as well as very small films that are gaining immense international recognition and acclaim. And I think one area of my research interest that I am, of late I have been very interested in is the area of film festivals. And I think film festivals are really doing a great job of promoting the kinds of cinema that need to be, or the kinds of films that need to be projected at an international level. So some of the movies that I just mentioned, so they have been traveling, and I do hope that there is a greater, more concerted efforts to promote them and project them and exhibit and distribute them. And dubbing is one way, but I often think that dubbing is not really done all that well. So perhaps, we can, maybe if we can improve the subtitling of our wonderful regional cinema, and of course with the OTTs, things are improving in the last 3-4 years. The kind of attention regional cinema has gained, particularly because of our OTTs. So I think that's a very heartening situation. So these are just my scattered musings that I wanted to share with you. I think I've taken my time, Dr. Juhi.
No, ma'am. Absolutely. It was wonderful to hear from you, ma'am.
Just wanted to introduce, and perhaps then we can talk.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for that insightful initial address. I would now like to introduce the chief guest of the session, Professor Rita Datta. Professor Rita Datta is a professor, film critic, and editor. She teaches in a college under Calcutta University. A member of International Film Critics Association, that is FIPRESCI, at present. She is currently editing a book on Indian regional films. She is the editor of the International Film Journal Film Buff. She is also working on her doctoral thesis on cinema. She has visited many international film festivals worldwide as a juror in Cannes, Busan, Kiev, Cairo, Kerala, Ocean Cinefem, Nepal, Aswan, Ukraine, to name a few. Delivered lectures in Istanbul, Almaty, Poland, East Europe, China, Brazil, and a few other places at home and abroad. She has contributed in various national and international publications. Recently, she is in the editorial board of a publication named Critics on Indian Cinema that has been published recently and is also available online. Over to you, Professor Datta.
Thank you, Juhi. Professor Juhi Pathak. And hello, everyone. Good evening. Um, I would like to thank Sharda University and Global Media Education Conclave to provide me with this viable platform to speak on this extremely pertinent subject, potential and impediments of Indian regional cinema. So I'm happy that of late people are discovering cinemas other than Hindi cinema. And we have always, as critics, we have always encouraged the other language cinema. And as you know that I am editing a book on Indian regional cinema currently. So for me, this regional cinema, the whole term is a misnomer. There are cinemas of India, and a Tamil cinema is also an Indian cinema as much as a Hindi cinema. So these are cinemas being produced in various languages, and that which truly represent the quintessence of Indian culture, that is heterogeneous as well as diverse. Without understanding a cinema from Assam, Manipur, Gujarat, Kerala, and Bengal, one cannot really claim to know the intricacies of Indian culture. Of late, because of this wider distribution system and multiplex culture, we get to watch all kinds of cinemas coming from all corners of the country. They are coming with subtitles to capture wider market. For many years, Tamil, Telugu language cinemas are being dubbed into Hindi and other languages and being hugely appreciated within India and also in abroad. I want to mention specifically about Bengali film industry. From 1980s onwards, we witnessed a lull period in Bengal in terms of its cinema. From 90s onwards, a breed of young filmmakers started being inspired by mainly Tamil and Telugu commercial blockbusters, and they adapted these films as well as popularized the trend. In 2008, a film directed by Raj Chakraborty, who is currently the director of Calcutta International Film Festival, and this film was also his debut film. It's called Chirodini Tumi Je Amar, You Are Eternally Mine. That was taken from 2004 Balaji Shaktivel's film Kadal. This remained one of the highest grossing Bengali films in Tollywood since the 1990s. This phenomenal success kind of revamped the dying industry. In sharp contrast to the hegemonic monolithic Hindi film industry, the other language cinemas of India offer a fresh perspective towards the myriad issues happening around us, newer aesthetics, and impressive narratives. So much so that Bollywood has begun dubbing them as well as copying them. Most recent instance would be Nagraj Manjule's Marathi film Sairat 2016 that has been remade in Hindi as titled Dhadak. Karan Johar has bought this right from Nagraj. Internationally, as always, these other language cinema more than Hindi films saved our face time and again. In almost all big festivals in the last few years, it is either a Malayalam film, for example, Shonal Kumar Shashidharan's much controversial Sexy Durga, winning Hivo's Tiger Award in Rotterdam in 2017, or Pebbles by Vinataraj, Tamil film, in the same festival in 2021, have starred the international film festival market. Sairat receiving standing ovation in 66th Berlin International Film Festival in 2016 is another glaring example. Rima Dash, a female filmmaker from Assam, won numerous awards for her films Bulbul Can Sing in 2018 and Village Rockstars in 2017. With the proliferation of streaming platform, access to these films challenged the monopoly of Bollywood so much so that the Hindi film industry changed their pattern of storytelling to remain viable. Foreign market accelerated the growth of these industries. Recently, Bahubali gained huge response overseas, yet the distribution system of Bollywood is much more wider than the regional, the other language film industry. Because of this OTT platform, these films are being watched more and more across the country. Yet it is being seen by mostly urban educated class who can afford the OTT platforms, which are pretty expensive and have a high internet connectivity. they can only enjoy these films. A newer kind of content and technicalities have been manufactured to woo these sort of audience. Even then, these OTT platforms pursue industry bigwigs rather than independent filmmakers to make content for their platform. While looking for films to purchase, a few corporate honchos are deciding the fate of these small budget films in other languages with hardly any knowledge of films. Profit making is the sole motive of this business, and language is secondary here. Otherwise, the immensely popular Telugu film Pushpa featuring Allu Arjun wouldn't have been dubbed into so many languages. Almost more than half of the Indian population have watched and appreciated this film recently. Besides the commercial other language cinema, it is the independent films in various languages that truly reflected the mixed milieu of the country. Globally, India has always been and taken seriously for filmmakers like Ray, Ghatak, Adur Gopalakrishnan, and Girish Kasaravalli for their kinds of cinema. Recent times during pandemic, where there has been a spike in regional language streaming, non-Bollywood has come out in a better shape. Most of the regional films have taken a major plunge into digital premieres. Malayalam films like Drishyam has been picked up by Bollywood for having its own kind of own Hindi version. As regional films, be it in commercial popular or art house cinema, experimenting a lot and willingly taking risky bets, Bollywood's dominance may get cut down to size. All these big digital platforms eyeing for their regional language acquisition in a massive scale, several opportunities have opened up for regional language films. Media experts pointed out that there have been an estimated 180 to 200 million active monthly users of the OTTs that has yet significantly been lower than their potential market. Hence, there is bound to be more growth, and I would like to believe that with this growth, regional films will get a boost due to the streaming service. I see lots of possibilities. The way OTT served this purpose of regional commercial films may not yet act as a boon for the independent small filmmakers. Even within the paradigm of OTT world, hierarchies exist. In the last few years, outstanding regional films like Nasir by Arun Karthik, Eb Eli Oop by Pratik Vats, Assamese film from Bhaskar Hajarika, Jallikattu, the Malayalam film by Lijo Pelisseri, The Great Indian Kitchen by Geo Baby, Disciple Chaitanya Tamhane, which is a Marathi film, Loktak Lairembe, Hauban Pavan Kumar, which is a Manipuri film, and Mandela Tamil film, and Lina Manimekla's Madhati, won our hearts and provided tough competition to Hindi film industry. So I always have seen a lot of possibilities for the other language cinema rather than the stereotypical Hindi language film. And these cinemas are showing immense potential in its growth, only with more and more fiscal support from the state, which is in decline. Unfortunately, media and good deal of promotion, it may push this trajectory of Indian films further locally as well as globally. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the extremely articulated expression on the topic. And the solutions that you have offered at the end are really worth noting. Thank you, ma'am. Now it's time to bestow the honors on Professor Somnath Sen, sir, for his stellar contribution to media education. I would like to take a moment of the audience to introduce Professor Sen. Professor Somnath Sen is a renowned Indian director, writer, and lyricist who primarily worked in the Bengali cinema industry. Currently, Professor Sen is the head of Institute, Amity School of Film and Drama, Amity University, Noida, Uttar Pradesh. In 1987, Professor Somnath Sen began his career in the visual field as an assistant director in TV serials. With a career spanning more than 3 decades, Professor Somnath has worked in different areas of filmmaking, including direction, editing, script writing, and cinematography. He has worked in more than 100 productions, including feature films, documentaries, music videos, TV series, and commercials, both in India and in the United States of America. Professor Somnath moved to Mumbai after finishing his master's program in film direction at the USC School of Cinema Television and has worked in mainstream Hindi cinema such as Raja Hindustani 1996, Ajay 1996, Jodhwa 1997, Kari 1998, Janam Sanja Karu 1999, and Kache Dhage 1999. Many of these films were super hits of its time. 67 Down, Somnath's debut script, was created while he was a student at USC's film school. The National Picture Development Corporation approved the film. He has worked as a writer for a number of television shows, including Krishna 2000, Champions, Chilman, and others. Professor Sen was the former director of Outreach and Academic Affiliations at Whistling Woods International, a film, communications, and media arts institute, Mumbai, that was founded by Sri Subhash Ghai. Professor Somnath Sen is known for his work on Faisla 2005, Leela 2002, and Black Cadillac 2003. I now request Professor Sen to speak a few words on the topic of the day. And before that, I would request Professor K.G. Suresh Sir to bestow the honors of today's award on Sir. And I request Chief Guest for the felicitation ceremony to please come and share the stage together. Suresh Sir, over to you, sir. You have to,
Yes, thank you
yes,
so
sir.
much. It is such an honor for the Global Media Education Council to honor Professor Somnath Sen with this very prestigious recognition, which he truly deserves. Sometimes the award is honored by the people who actually deserve to be honored, and that this is at a time when you don't see there are other factors which play a role in awards and other recognitions. But here is an award and an awardee who, I mean, both of them, the award and the awardee, are equally prestigious. They are both credible and they are truly deserving. And I think that we feel really delighted to honor Professor Somnath Sen and his contribution in the field of media education, of which cinema is a very, very integral part, is indeed a moment of honor for all of us. We welcome you to the GMAC fraternity also, and we look forward to your guidance in the coming days. Thank you, Professor Somnath Sen, for accepting this award.
Wow. Dr. Pathak, let me know.
Oh, sorry, this video will play, sir.
Okay.
Please play the video. Over to you, sir. Congratulations, sir. We are honored and privileged to even be part of this, today's ceremony, where you are being honored for the stellar contribution to media education. A truly deserving professor who has contributed almost 3 to 4 decades of his life towards media education. Thank you, sir. Honored and privileged. Thank you, sir. Over to you.
Wow. I don't know what to say. I'm overwhelmed. I'm, of course, honored and humbled by this, Professor Suresh, Professor Chaudhary, Dr. Pathak. I'm really, a filmmaker, not I'm an accidental teacher. I'm not an academic. I'm not a researcher. My research is my scripts, my films that I make that people see. I've got a lot of awards for making films. This is the first one I've got for teaching. So, tahe dil se aap logon ka shukriya. Thank you very much. And Joy ma'am, can I do a quick presentation? You said I have 5-7 minutes.
Absolutely, absolutely, sir.
And Professor Suresh, I entirely agree with you, and I'm going to come to that in a minute. When you say Indian languages as opposed to regional versus Bollywood, some people don't like the word Bollywood. I have no problems with it personally. Again, I'm not an academic. What you're going to hear are my personal thoughts that are put together. What I'd like to do is share a PowerPoint that I've quickly put together. And please let me know when you can see it.
We can see it, sir. It's visible.
Right. Fantastic. So, whenever I talk about anything, and in this case, regional/Indian cinema, I could finish this in one sentence. The potential of regional cinema, fantastic. Challenges, right now, none whatsoever, I feel. Having said that, whenever I teach my students, I start with history, and we have to go all the way back to what I call mute cinema, because that cinema was not silent. It was mute, it did not speak. But that cinema at the beginning of the last century, 1884, end of the century before that, was mute, but it was universal. Everybody understood the cinema. And just to give an example of Mr. Charlie Chaplin, he was a citizen of the world. In fact, he was born in the UK. He lived in the US for 40 years, never took a passport in the US. Got into trouble because of his left leanings, had to leave the country. But all over the world, people recognized his cinema. They felt connected to it because there was no dialogue in it. Of course, in 1927, with the advent of sound, culture came into cinema. And with culture came language. And with language, we started to see different cinemas as opposed to a universal world cinema. In the First World War, German soldiers, British soldiers, all were found with the picture of the same Danish actress in their pocket, because again, cinema was universal. But with the advent of culture and language, with the advent of sound, language comes in and culture comes in. This, of course, is 1932, 5 years after sound came to cinema in the West and Hollywood, Alamara, and as you can see, it's advertised as the all-talking, all-singing, all-dancing film, and Indian cinema was never the same again. We are a musical people. We sing when we're born. We sing when we die. We have songs for everything. Birha, your husband goes away, Birha ka gana. Your husband comes home, Milan ka gana. We have a song for every season. We have a rag for every time of the day. So obviously our storytelling is intricately tied up with singing, dancing, and our storytelling is songs. Even the Veds are written in verse. All of our liturgy is in verse. So it's no surprise that once Alamara came, it became the norm for Indian cinema to sing. And when that happened in 1932, the doors to Indian audiences were shut for non-Indian cinema because they didn't have songs. In India, of course, before sound, we had silent cinema, so to speak, pre-sound, mute cinema. And Kolhapur was a center which moved to Pune. I'm talking about Prabhat. And of course, there was New Theatre. Somehow they all ended up in Bombay around the time sound came, and a lot of people from Bengal, New Theatres moved. And even in India, language at that time started to separate different cinemas of India. But I agree with Professor Suresh that what is considered Bollywood is even an Indian, in a way, regional cinema. Yes, it has more reach because there is a strict divide between North India and South India. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. And I know Bengalis, I know people from Bangladesh, actually, where Professor Chaudhary is, who've told me they've learned Hindi by watching mainstream Hindustani cinema, which is also known as Bollywood. What is this divide we're talking about? Actually, I'll come to that in a second. Really want to quickly talk about Hollywood, which is the dominant filmmaking industry in the world today. 70–80% of their revenues come from international sales. They have spelled the death knell for many erstwhile vibrant film industries, as most people here would know. The Danish film industry, Italian film industry, Argentina, England, France, Germany. But still, they only have 3% penetration in India. Now, that number has gone up as far as box office goes because of multiplexes and tickets cost more. Some people, of course, like Avatar, for example, do better. But mota 97% of Indians prefer Indian cinema. And why is that? Indian mainstream cinema is not considered cinema in the West. It is not taken seriously. Bollywood is considered a fad, quirky, non-conventional. Primarily because of these four things. Our cinema does not respect the continuum of time and space, which is the basis, the main rule of cinema is continuity. We are not concerned about that because of the way we tell our stories. The second thing Western cinema is built on is realism, verisimilitude. We don't believe in that. Boy looks into girl's eyes, camera defocuses, they're singing and dancing in Egypt. The Western audience is, how did they get a visa? We're like, we don't care. Enjoy the song. And of course, songs, because it is such an intricate part of our storytelling and over-the-top acting. All of these are integral parts of Indian cinema that a Western audience gets pulled out of. The suspension of disbelief is shattered when any of these things happen. But we have it in our civilization. Adrishya ho jana, prakat ho jana. So the continuum of time and space doesn't really exist in our storytelling. I'm talking about the Mahabharata, the Ramayana. So of course, 97% of Indians prefer Indian cinema. And it is no wonder. Talking about Bollywood real quick, I want to bring something in. I'm sure most of you know that Nigeria makes the most films in the world when we're talking about feature films, 2,000 plus. So when I went to Lagos, I went to Nigeria. I was so excited about seeing Nigerian cinema. I told my host to take me to multiplexes. All I saw there were Hollywood films. So those 2,000 films in Nigeria went straight to CDs or DVDs, and they were sold on the streets. And 2,000 films are made. But when we are talking about the 2,000 odd, just under films that are made in India, I'm talking about films that go through the Central Board of Film Certification, CBFC. These are films that are certified by this organization, which means that those are films that are actually have the potential of being seen by audiences. Here is the most interesting thing that this is from the KPMG report that comes out every year, and Vicky Frames and Ujjwal have gone there often together even. What you'll see here is that, and the next slide real quick. I believe this is 2018 or 19, just before the pandemic. So if you look at it, Hindi films is 265, Tamil 310, Telugu 325, Kannada 210, Malayalam 150. And together, they are more than 50% of the films made in India. So calling Indian cinema Bollywood is a big injustice to Indian cinema, I think. Yes, as I said, north of India, the Indo-Gangetic Plain, the Cow Belt, politically very strong, independence movement. But once they tried to make Hindi the national language, obviously the 4 states in the south rebelled against them. And I just want to give 2 examples of this loss in translation from regional cinema to when we make, Ms. Datta gave amazing examples of films like Drishyam that have been made into Hindi. I want to talk about Mr. Priyadarshan, his film that was made into, somebody help me out here. Juhi, what was that film with Akshay Kumar and Sunil Shetty?
Suryavanshi.
No, Paresh Rawal also.
Sir,
Hera Fairy.
Hera Fairy.
Hera Fairy. So Hera Fairy is a Tamil film, is a Malayali film made by Priyadarshan. And really, what is the point of that cinema? The point is that the Malayalam, the Kerala, the economy has gone to the Gulf, and jobs are at a premium. That's why one man and one woman are fighting for a job. That does not translate to Bombay. More important, Roja, and I was talking to Mr. Hariharan, who was the director of LV Prasad Film School in Chennai. He has this wonderful take on Roja. What is Roja? Roja is about a Tamil girl from South India going to the north and bringing her husband back. Right? It is like the Yamraj has taken your husband away. You go and get your husband back from North India. And who's North India? The people who are trying to impose Hindi on you. Somebody going from Bombay to Kashmir is not the same thing, does not cut it, which is why regional cinema is so beautiful, because there's a lot lost in translation. We make meaning of who we are, what we are, and which is why these 4 cinemas have a dedicated audience. I was shocked initially when I first found out the amount of money that was spent on a Telugu film. And then I realized that every person in Andhra Pradesh at that time, and today Telangana also, they go to theaters 3-4 times to watch the same film. That is the dedication towards regional cinema. And I would like to finish with one more thing about the OTT platforms. Just like there are OTT platforms that play mainstream Hindustani cinema, every single language, including Bengali, Marathi, Malayalam, Kannada, have their own OTT platforms that are playing these cinemas. So to round up where I started, what is the potential of the cinema? It's tremendous. Challenges right now, I don't see any. And I will end there, Dr. Pathak. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a very brief, at the same time, very crisp presentation, and the data that you have shown is something that we really need to look at and also ponder on the words that you've just spoken. To the panel here and to the audience, I regret to say that we have lost internet connection from Professor Rita Dutta, and also from our next speaker, the corporate speaker for today, Ms. Gopi Desai ma'am. We have lost 2 of them to internet issues, and I regret having lost the opportunity to actually hear from them and learn from them. So I regret that opportunity, and sorry for that. I would now straight away move to Professor, our next speaker. That's our keynote speaker today, Professor Swarnavel Ishwaran Pillai sir. I would give you a quick introduction of sir. Professor Swarnavel Ishwaran sir is an associate professor in the Department of English and the School of Journalism at Michigan State University, USA. He is a graduate from the preeminent Film and Television Institute of India, FTII, and the prestigious Film Studies program at the University of Iowa. His documentaries include Nagapattinam, Waves from the Deep, 2018, Among Memories at the Crossroad, 2016, Migrations of Islam, 2014, and Unfinished Journey, A City in Transition, 2012. His research focuses on Tamil cinema's history, aesthetics, politics, and the contemporary digital era, and the concomitant changes in the production, distribution, and reception of films. His books include Tamil Cinema Reviews, 1931 to 1960, published by Nizal Publications 2020, and Madras Studios Narrative, Genre, and Ideology in Tamil Cinema, published by the prestigious Sage Publications in 2015. His fiction feature, Kattumaram, was published by Catamaran Publications 2019, a collaboration with Tamil cinema's leading director, Miskin, in currently on the film's festival circuit, and it is doing amazingly well. I request sir to kindly provide his valuable insights. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pathak. Thank you, Professor Suresh. Congratulations, Professor Somnath Sen and Professor Iqbal, Professor Datta, and the great artist and filmmaker Desai. I'm happy to be here, and of course, that many of the speakers touched upon a lot of points, which are key and which I was also pondering about, which generally we think about today when we think about regional cinema. So I wanted to, just have a continuity, with what Professor Sen was, talking about. The very significant period, when sound arrives. See, that's the point where, the idea of the regional actually takes shape, Prior to that, as he pointed out with Charlie Chaplin as an example, silent cinema could reach universally, even if certain markers could be there, like the landscape and the train, in Edwin Potter's film, drawing from the great legacy of Westerns they have in the literature. But yet, they could appeal to a universal audience because, the conflict is very clear. It is not about dialogues. It's not about the specificity, of the nuances of accents, but it is silent. So, but even then, filmmakers always tried to be explicit. They were anxious. Will I be missing my audience? So you had the concept of intertitles. So if you look at not only in fiction films, like that of Chaplin or the great Buster Keaton, but also documentaries, Flaherty, you'll have very ornate, wonderfully, designed, intertitles. So language has always played an important role. So let me, come to the point, because this is going to be a brief session. That is, like after Alamara, that there was a film called Kalidas, which is, supposed to be, and which is, today we recognize as the first sound, talkie film. And it complicated the idea of, the first talkie in Tamil, because it was also advertised as the first talkie in Tamil as well as Telugu. Actually, it should have also been the first talkie in India had Alamara not been released, a few months earlier, because you had a character talking in Tamil, actually singing in Tamil, T.P. Rajalakshmi, and character protagonist who was responding to her in Telugu, and there was L.V. Prasad, great iconic, L.V. Prasad of Ek Duje Ke Liye, as the North would know him. For us, he's not only a great filmmaker, but also a pioneer, one of the great studio owners, L.V. Prasad Studio, which had the largest lab in Asia.
Still does, one of the largest labs still.
Yes. So, because, it complicates the idea, that when you have characters speaking in 3 different languages in the same film, how would you claim, that it is a Tamil talking? That scholars have wondered, like Stephen Hughes, what is Tamil about Tamil cinema? It's a wonderful essay, one could see the response, to such very pertinent questions in the reviews in 1930s itself of a great critic by name Kalki. So Kalki writes on Kalidas right in 1931. Kalki I regard as, that arguably for me is the greatest Indian critic of the 1930s in India. I've not seen another critic in 1930s so consistently writing over the entire decade with such close attention to technical, to aesthetics, most importantly to language. So he talks about, that how T.P. Rajalakshmi was in all the advertisements of Kalidas. And she was foregrounded because we already knew her, because she's already a star. Because why? Because she was already a star on stage. And how? Because, she could sing her songs in Tamil on stage. That is one of, like today, even when you are, making a claim out Bahubali as a South Indian film, it's predicated, on where it is made, most importantly about the stars, isn't it? A commodity on which, we sell film. or with which, like, for example, any Rajnikant film today may have a global market. As Professor Suresh pointed out, some of his films like Muthu have done well even in Japan. But yet he remains a Tamil star because, because of stardom, isn't it? The way, his story is mobilized. And scholars have argued that how when male stars get rooted to the region, females, they kind of, cross the boundary so easily. We have, stars like, for example, from Vajantimala onwards, Padmini, or, the great Sridevi, and or, the other way, like Kushbu or Simran, who have become Tamil stars. Whereas Kamal Haasan, is a great actor. He acted in Ek Duje Ke Liye, but yet, that he remained, a Tamil star. So, coming back to this point of the region, that on the one hand, we can talk about these huge, blockbuster films, as I was mentioning about Rajini, or, the big stars, like in, Prabhas contemporarily, with his Radheshram and Bahubali, or RRR, or Pushpa, which was discussed, today. But there is the other region, that which is predicated on, the specificity of culture, of language, perhaps of life itself on the fringes. So that is equally, or perhaps even more important, isn't it? Because as far as, the mainstream cinema is concerned, particularly now, more and more, it does not matter, because, the idea of language or region is getting increasingly blurred. Of course, scholars will make an argument that yet, when you see the forest and, specific kind of plot points over which the entire film revolves in Pushpa is still, essentially at its core, a Telugu film, which is a valid argument. But I'm talking, generally, if you look at it, you go into Netflix and you want to watch Pushpa. What does it tell you? Because, you were browsing Tamil films. So you are watching it in Tamil with English subtitles. Then you kind of pause it, then you choose, because you think, something is not exactly resonating in the close-ups about the lip sync. Then you choose Telugu original and English subtitles. So the idea of, that a kind of pristine, language, which was defined by region, is getting, it was always complicated, from Kalidas to the contemporary, Netflix big blockbusters, the array of blockbusters on Netflix or Amazon or any other, OTT platforms. And then, what is the important question surrounding region, which we have to address? The important thing I feel is about, the smaller films, that the struggle still they have, in making a film and then trying to, sell it to OTT platforms. For example, like last 2 years of pandemic, even OTT have also been running around, giving up after the big, star ventures. So this has always been, a struggle for regional filmmakers. If you look at the history, it has been there right from the beginning. Then there was a ray of hope in the 70s with NFDC. But then, post 90s with globalization, liberalization, this struggle has been continuing. But because of that struggle, you can see that, filmmakers have also, that has brought out the best in filmmakers. For example, if you look at, Tamil cinema, say over the last 3 decades, around the time when Dilwale Dulhania Le Jayenge, DDLJ, abbreviation as we call it, it brought in the trend when we saw that gradually, the village was kind of, reinvented on Hindi screen. I'm talking about only huge blockbuster years. And the nuances of the villages, particularly the Hindi belt, comprising of, Madhya Pradesh or, Bhojpuri speaking UP areas and other dialects, Kundi, or maybe, what they are trying to recover, or those which are kind of, endangered kind of species, which occasionally we could get a flavor of, like say, in the way Dilip Kumar would bring in, in Ganga Jamuna within the mainstream, So that was, getting co-opted into this, larger, nostalgic, huge, and every village is kind of monolithic, painted in post-production with the digital. So to fight against such a thing, if you look at Tamil cinema, around the same time, it became more and more rooted in the region. More and more, the films even became darker. If you look at, Bala's films, or, Vetrimaran, or Ram, or Mishkin, whom I call as the transitional generation. Because why? Because, they started working in the celluloid, but also kind of, they were young at that point of time. And now they are making their films in digital. They also came through the regular kind of working, assisting a director, going through the rigmarole. Many of them, 3 of them, except Miskin, also worked under the great school of Balu Mehndra, the school of realism. And then, they've been making their films. So you can see that this transitional generation, they are bringing in an idea of the regional, rooted in also the classical kind of storytelling. Unlike, say, the children of the digital, the post-millennial cinema, Tamil cinema, like Karthik Subbaraj, you can find, that they are more invested, in non-linear, in a dysfunctional family, which is even almost non-existent, most of the cases, broadly. So you can see that, on the one hand, regional is getting into the idea of questioning the classical trope of melodrama in 1960s melodrama, films like, say, Baha Pirivinai, where the film started with Pungal, the Sankranti, when, the custom is outside the house, you boil rice in a pot to sun god. And at the time of the interval, there was a literal break because both the brothers, because of their wives and, other reasons, brother-in-law of one of the wives who comes from Singapore and complicates, there is a divide, there is a partition, and you have 2 Pongals outside the house. And then in the end, the wall is broken down and the family again becomes one. The status quo is affirmed. So it is, one of the extraordinarily classic examples of melodrama. But so briefly, to talk about melodrama. So what does, the trope of melodrama involve as a genre? On the one hand, you have the family photograph. Then around the interval time, there is a kind of a break. And then you have it erased and things come together. And also in nuanced or qualitative directors have the melodrama, the romance in the foreground. Then in the background, like in Gone with the Wind, there is a civil war going on. And then, that will also be resolved by the time the problems in the foreground are resolved. So regional film, melodrama offered an opportunity that what about the stories in the background? We'll go to our specific stories. Yes, we have to, retain this trope to engage the audience. But in the backdrop, it offered us an opportunity to tell something which is very specific to our region. Just to, give an example is what Professor Sen was, mentioning about Roja. In Roja, literally, even in the Hindi version, you have a shot because it was dubbed where the newspaper is in Tamil. But despite that, even I remember that we were shooting in Kunarak, an episode, with the great, Bharatanatyam artist, Yamini Krishnamurthy, who made, but through a dance, the chariot itself move. But as I was coming out, on one of the shooting days for a tea, I watched, even there, Roja's poster was there, even in, so Orissa, you can find, posters. So this is, one of the reasons, why something very specific also always appeals, to a national audience, because the co-opting monolithically does not, when it is monolithic, it does not offer the spaces for ruptures, where your own story is told, where your own grief is addressed, where your own anxieties are reflected upon. So that's where the region comes in. That on the one hand, it is about life on the fringes, On the other hand, it is about giving voice. For example, that if you look at the recent Netflix film, Jai Bhim, by the great actor Surya, who is also a wonderful producer, you can see that it addresses Nari Kuravas, who we call, who fall into the category of Adi Dravidas, scheduled tribe people, nomadic populace. So he addresses their issues in the mainstream. And just go back a little bit, not even like 9 years, when our great Paranjit started, the most important intervention in Indian cinema, that positing the Dalit voice in mainstream, that you later have Article 15, but yet it has to be, driven by a Brahmin or a non-Dalit protagonist. But here, Ranjit did some major intervention. So that is what the regional cinema is capable of. When I say giving voices to people. So here we are talking about just the mainstream interventions because of the time. I'm just limiting, because also the reason some of you might have watched Kala or Kabali. I mean, look at any of Vetrimaran's films, where suddenly you find that the villains are no more black. They're increasingly fair and fairer, and protagonists are more like us, dark brown and darker. That itself is an intervention. It comes because of that a recent crop is also extremely engaged with literature, not just classical literature, but also the writings of Periyar, Ambedkar. So that drives their kind of work, their aesthetics, their politics. Even think of to give an example to extend that more concretely, Nana Patekar in Kala. He's white, and Rajni is always, of course, he was always darker, our angry young man from the 70s. But here he is also marked through his costume. Kala, the very title, isn't it? So this is the kind of intervention that the regional can bring. So may I ask you if I have the time, Dr. Patak?
Yes, sir. Please, you can continue, sir. It is. I'm learning so much. I'm writing down.
How much more time?
Important. So you can take another 2-3 minutes, sir. Please.
Okay.
Sir.
Okay. Thank you. So the other important thing I wanted to address was, for example, that 2 years back, I got an email from Sundance, and they said they had 13,000 entries. So that always, made me, think a lot. That is, if there is going to be 13,000 entries, at least maybe 10,000 of them will be feature films. So I mean, where and how a panel will watch those films? It's highly impossible. Because I have friends who have been on the jury in Sundance, and they also told me that it's also physically impossible. So all they will do with most of the film is just watch, a few minutes, the film. And it was a little bit of shocking, but it is also totally understandable that many young filmmakers, or even of my own generation, they only wanted to make films but not participate in the other side of it, beyond the jury. That's why I respect most of the work of all these people, including Raita. That this is a very important work to be done. That you be there, you watch films, and you argue and you fight for them. For example, say I will ask you a question, even of arguably the greatest, according to me, or one of the great 5 filmmakers of the last century, Satyajit Ray. Even if you were to take first 2 minutes of any of his films, what idea you will get about his work? Leave alone other young filmmakers who struggle to tell the story with their budgets, with their inexperience, trying to go by trial and error, learn, that these kind of spaces, therefore, that on the one hand, that digital has democratized the field. Undoubtedly, we are able to make films. I've been making, documentaries throughout my life, and I made my first feature, 2 years back with Mishkin, one of the top tier director in the forefront of Tamil cinema in the last decade. And it has traveled well, both in South Asian film festivals and most importantly, LGBTQ film festivals. Frameline, which is the largest and the longest running, in its 43rd installment, Katumaram was screened twice in the same week. It had, because it was screened there, it was picked up, in the entire, LGBTQ film. It traveled well. But yet the struggle remains, to get it into OTT, for such a small film, which is only about 70 minutes. Of course, I can go on and on, but that is a topic for some other discussion. But of course, on the other hand, there is also hope that because it also traveled, because I took it to Goa, and the great Nasreen Muni Kabir saw it. It was picked up by Channel 4, and it was screened also on the online platform. So I mean, if you struggle, if you're willing to wait, you can break even. So to that extent, I agree with Professor Sen's argument, claim that there are no challenges. But yet, I mean, challenges are there. It is difficult, but it is not impossible, like earlier times. That is what I would say. If you want to really make a film and you go by your heart, you do not want to make normal compromises. Also with the digital, you feel increasingly the time has come for the realization of the dream of the great Alexander Ostrog, who said that cinema should allow us to write like the pen of a writer. Today, the time has come. You can take your cell phone, you can make your film. So that is also, I believe, like 4 years back when I was in the Jubi year, I saw, we had at least 4 entries totally made from cell phone. At that point of time, it was iPhone 7, which was much lesser, in terms of, its saturation level or kind of, today you can tap on the iPhone and focus on particular parts. At that time, that was not available. But yet, they were telling stories because of, this mobility, these affordances of these cameras now. So that is where I think the next intervention, there will be the huge films, when increasingly OTT will become the major, player along with theaters. But then there will also be, consistent with the spirit of the artist filmmaker who has always existed, who could not be erased, despite being on the fringes. I mean, this is kind of, heartening for me in a way, because, that first time we see technology nowadays, I mean, 1929, the great Zigawato took his camera, ran in the street, he wrote his manifesto, and he said, man with the movie camera, his dreams, are coming true now, isn't it? I mean, you can go, you can push, I also saw, during the 70s, when Mitchell was gone and Harry Flex came, this mobile camera, but yet, you couldn't afford to buy an Harry, like the way you can buy a cell phone or the way you can buy a DSLR camera, it was not possible. But today, I mean, the interventionist technology is extremely different in nature, in the way that you can even own it, or in the way you can hire it from your friends. And in the way the other accessories have come, like gimbal, to really give that kind of very smooth effect. So that is heartening for me, that in a way technology is enabling that kind of aesthetics. And therefore, when increasingly, I mean, that everybody can be a reasonably good technician, by default, then you have to focus on the stories. That is where regional will play a major role, because, only with the specificity of somebody's life and locale, you can tell a story which will touch a universal heart, where the personal will become universal. That is where the beauty and the strength of the regional lay, and it will always be, in the future. Thank you.
Amazing, sir. Amazing, amazing lecture to hear to, sir. Really wonderful. And those, short phrases like spaces for ruptures and life on the fringes, giving voice, mainstream interventions. These are, food for thought for even audiences like us who are very new, probably into, and who have so much to learn from stalwarts in film studies like both of you right in front of me, and Professor Dr. Aisha Iqbal, ma'am, who I now request to, as the chair of the session, to sum up the session for today with her valuable comments. Over to you, ma'am.
Yes, I'm coming. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So I'm sure has asked me. My video is on, right? You can see me. You can see me, right?
Ma'am, there is an audio glitch from your end. I think it's there for. Yes, ma'am. I can't see you.
You can hear me.
Now you.
Yeah. I'll be very quick, and it has been such an enlightening, illuminating experience to listen to all of you. Of course, I'm very much familiar with your works, particularly I'm very much familiar with the works of Dr. Swarnavale. And I have been reading your articles, various journals. I'm familiar with your works. And it is such a pleasure to see you face to face, at least virtually face to face, Professor. Finally,
Thank you.
Professor Somnath Sen, your wonderful work, and which is a part of our Hall of Fame of cinema, contemporary cinema. Some of them very light-hearted and entertaining at the same time, films with great social messages and cinema. As I'm interested in cinema of social consciousness, so yes, we are familiar with your work, and it was so heartening to listen to all of you. As Professor Swarnavale mentioned, that these interactions have always been there. You mentioned my favorite Sri Devi, who is my all-time favorite actor. Recently, I was asked to write on or give my comments on Madhuri Dixit, and I wrote something, the author wanted some bits of quotes from me on Madhuri Dixit, and I gave them to her. She's a very good friend of mine. But while writing on Madhuri Dixit, Sri Devi was constantly on my mind, because Sri Devi was someone who sort of revolutionized cinema, and one great film artist who made the crossover so successfully. I mean, we know that Rekha and Hema Malini, they are also from the southern part, but they are not really known for their South Indian cinema, if I am not mistaken.
Absolutely, you're right.
Yeah. But Sri Devi was a superstar down south. Likewise, Jayaprada in Telugu cinema, and Sri Devi just took the world by Bollywood by storm, and till from Himmatwala till English and Mom, she continued to enthrall us. I'm talking about from my vantage point as a Hindi speaker. Of course, we knew, now we know the enormous work very substantial work done by Rajnikant down south, and of course Kamal Hassan. But back then, in when these superstars made their debut in Hindi cinema, we knew that we are watching some, because sir, you mentioned some, Professor Swarnavale, you mentioned something about Tamil actors and Rajni, and also so that was our introduction to Rajni and Kamal with Andha Kanun and Ek Duje Ke Liye. They did very well, but I think those were I think the times were not really ripe at that particular point in our history, where crossover, especially for male actors could be made so successfully. But once I shifted to the South and then I watched their films, especially their old films, earlier films, some of which are in black and white, and such great acting, so much of depth, and people, the actors who were never scared of or never worried about taking risks with their image. So I'm talking about early Rajni and Kamal Hassan, of course, throughout. So yes, so that is, that their contribution is, of course, undeniable. I also remember when I was in university, and I was at a place called IFLU, Hyderabad, and that was the period when Virasat was released. And at the same time, we watched Virasat, when Virasat was released in Hindi, directed by Priyadarshan and starring Anil Kapoor, of course. So that was the point when we made it a point to watch Tevar Magan also, and we realized that how beautiful Tevar Magan was. So many things it said, which but of course Virasat has its own value. But Tevar Magan, if you watch back to back, I wouldn't say much lost in translation. I wouldn't go that far, but yeah, you have to watch Tevar Magan and Virasat, and I would say celebrate the differences rather than discuss what is lost. I would say yes, it is more worthwhile to celebrate our diversity and the differences. So I think it has been a very fruitful, very enlightening, and very, very kind of knowledgeable interaction with all of you. And I'm so happy to be a part of this. So thanks a lot for having me, Dr. Juhi. And I thank your university, and with a lot of appreciation for your program and the hard work you people are putting in, and Professor K.G. Suresh for effortlessly introducing and seguing all of us into the program. So a very nice and successful event. I wish you greater success in the future, Dr. Juhi.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Sir,
thank
you, I would just quickly present the vote of thanks. First and foremost, I graciously thank all our esteemed panelists and attentive audience. I'm immensely grateful to GSEC and JMEC for providing me with the opportunity of holding such meaningful discussions and discourses with enlightened panelists on a global platform. I'm immensely grateful to Dr. Aisha Iqbal, who accepted my invitation to chair the session today, Professor Rita Datta for accepting to be the chief guest of the session, Ms. Gopi Desai, who we unfortunately due to internet connectivity issue could not hear today, but definitely in an upcoming session we shall hope to hear from her, and stalwarts in film academic studies like Dr. Swarnaval Ishwaran Pillai sir, who joined us from USA. It's early morning there. Thank you so much, sir. And and Professor Somnath Sen, sir, who has also been awarded for a stellar contribution, and I take the privilege and honor that this honor was today bestowed upon sir on my session. And I'm humbled that Professor Dr. K.G. Suresh, President JMEC, introduced me today to lead the session. Heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Ujjwal Anush Chaudhary, sir, who has always been a constant support and keeping faith in me throughout, from the time he has accepted me into this organization of that has been very meticulously curated by sir under his leadership and Professor K.G. Suresh sir's leadership. Here I would also take opportunity to thank once again Mr. Narendra Pandabiji, Director Media in Amity, Mumbai, who has contributed to the culmination of few of the esteemed panelists here for this event today. I thank all of you. I extend my warmest gratitude to the technical and backend team, including Ms. Manushree, Mr. Utkarsh, Zainab, who has been a constant support throughout today in this evening. Thank you so much, all of you. I wish to see you on another evening in another event, and that I hope to be moderating soon again. Thank you so much, each one of you. Thank you.
Juhi,
Thank you.
Before everyone says good night,
Yes, sir.
And in case of Mr. Ashwaran, it is not good night, it's actually morning. So
Yes, sir.
before everyone goes, my suggestion is, I will remind Dr. Aisha, Dr. Ashwaran, Professor Sen, that we'd require write-ups from you for the books that I have noted earlier. Dr.
Yes.
Juhu will follow up on that.
Yes.
And I'm really very happy to see my friend and buddy, Professor Sen, as one of the top 75 media stalwarts, academic stalwarts of the country, who has made an award-winning film. And then now into, when someone who has made an award-winning film then comes into academics, is a very different kettle of fish. I mean, fish because we are both Bengalis. So it's a very different kettle of fish. There are some people like our president KG Suresh has been a journalist, for a large part of his life, and going around the world, around the country in many forms, and then becoming academic is much more realistic. The speed at which his university today is working, the Makhanlal Chaturvedi University, has not been the case in the last 15 years that we know Makhanlal Chaturvedi has. I have been in journalism and television channel before coming into academics. So it's very good to see Somnath today in this program, and it's our honor as well. It's an honor to get Dr. Ashwaran so early in the morning, from very early in the morning actually, from US, and Dr. Iqbal joining us also from another part of the country. I hope that with support of all of you, intellectual time, suggestions and everything, the Global Media Education Council can go to the next level. We have already made a great impact. This is the 55th evening out of 75, 20 more to go. And we will end the 20 more by April 30th. So that's the thing. So with these words, on behalf of Global Media Education Council as its secretary, I once again thank you. I join Juhi in thanking you all. And Juhi for us is a model academic. She writes, she publishes books, she teaches, she has worked in the industry for a while. She's very well connected with that is how academic people should be. She's popular with the students. That is how one academic should be. In fact, the entire working committee, if you come into any other program, any other day, you will see the working committee members are all young, bright, and promising people who are doing a fabulous program, bringing all of you together like this in the other evenings. See you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, sir.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you, everyone. Good night, sir.
Good night.
Good night, ma'am. Thank you.